Federalists. So in this election, your Republicans are very strong, and your Federalists have kind of fizzled out. Okay? Now, prior to the election of 1824, Andrew Jackson's very, very popular. He's a national hero. What two events gave him that prestige? Give me one, Daniel. What did he do that gave him such a aura as a national hero by 1824?
Taking over the Indians.
Right. His successes against Indian tribes, right, made him a national hero. Luke Lamb, what's the other thing he did back a while back? Battle of New Orleans in the War of 1812. So he's very popular with the people of America prior to the election of 1824. And a lot of his followers and friends really urged him to run for the presidency. They felt he could win it. And he wasn't sure at first, but then he decided he would do it. So he's going to put his hat in the ring in the election of 1824. Now, as I mentioned, the Federalist Party is out of business, okay? So all we have is the Republican Party, and 4 men that we've talked about before are going to run for the presidency in 1824. They're all going to be Republicans, okay? And these names should be familiar. John Quincy Adams of Massachusetts is going to run for president. John Quincy Adams of Massachusetts. William H. Crawford of Georgia. William H. Crawford of Georgia. One of the famous 3, Henry Clay from Kentucky. One of the famous 3, Henry Clay from Kentucky. And of course the 4th is Andrew Jackson from Tennessee. So the 4 candidates, all members of the Republican Party in the election of 1824, were John Quincy Adams from Massachusetts, William H. Crawford from Georgia, Henry Clay from Kentucky, and Andrew Jackson from Tennessee. Now we know when we have an election you have popular vote and electoral vote, right? I'm going to give you the results of the popular vote in this election. Keeping in mind this is an open note test, let's get all the statistics. Okay? So when the election results were tabulated, here's the popular vote. In 4th place, with 46,979 votes, was William H. Crawford. In 4th place, with 46,979 votes, was William H. Crawford. In 3rd place was Henry Clay, with 47,217 popular votes. 3rd place, Henry Clay, 47,217 popular votes. In 2nd place in the popular vote was John Quincy Adams. John Quincy Adams was 2nd. He had 114,023. 114,023. And your winner in the popular vote was Andrew Jackson. And Andrew Jackson had 152,901. 152,901. So again, the results of the popular vote: Crawford, 46,979. Clay was in 3rd, 47,217. Adams in 2nd, 114,023. And Andrew Jackson wins the popular vote, 152,901. But we all know what, Kaylin? The popular vote doesn't make the difference. What does? What vote elects the president? What? You do too. That's right, the electoral vote. So you know, God, have some confidence. Now, you have to have 2/3 majority, don't you, of all the electoral vote to win? And it just happened to be that target number was 131. So to win this election, a candidate was going to have 131 electoral votes. That would have been 2/3 majority. So we'll tell you how the popular vote went. Okay? Keep it in mind that you need 131 to win. In fourth place in the electoral vote was Henry Clay. He had 37. In fourth place concerning the electoral vote was Henry Clay with 37. Next was William H. Crawford. He was in third, and he had 41. William H. Crawford, 41 votes in third place. In second place, again, will be John Quincy Adams with 84 electoral votes. Zoe, I know what you're thinking, and we're going right. John Quincy Adams is second with 84, and your winner in the Electoral College, Andrew Jackson, with 99. So Clay has 37, Crawford 41, Adams 84, Jackson 99. What's the problem with that, Regan? What's the problem with that electoral vote count? You always remember, the more candidates you have, the harder it is to do what? Get to the 2/3 majority. So what's the problem, Regan? No one got to 131. We've had this happen before with Aaron Burr and Thomas Jefferson. Remember? What happens if nobody gets it? Who decides? Come on. The House of Representatives. So this is going to go to the House. And it will be the House of Representatives, still the same way today. If Donald Trump does not get the required number of electoral votes in the election, last election, it would have went to the House. Okay? But he did. In this case, nobody did. So we'll go to the House of Representatives, and they will elect the president. However, at this time, according to rule, only the top 3 would be considered. So who's out? Henry Clay. Very good. Henry Clay is out. So only the top 3 are considered. So Henry Clay's out. Aisha, so what does Henry Clay do? Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr. What does Henry Clay do? Alexander Hamilton, Aaron Burr. What? What does Henry Clay do, keeping Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr in mind? You're pretty close. He wasn't quite as negative as Hamilton was. He didn't necessarily campaign against anyone. He campaigned for John Quincy Adams. And Clay had a ton of support in the House of Representatives. He has a lot of influence there. So he throws his support behind John Quincy Adams. And guess what happens, Andy? What? Well, not yet. But what happens before someone gets mad? If John Quincy Adams has the support of Henry Clay, who has a ton of pull in the House of Representatives, how does the election come out? John Quincy Adams wins. He gets 13 of the votes from the House. Jackson gets 7. Crawford gets 4. So because of the influence that Henry Clay had in the House of Representatives, you remember Alexander Hamilton? What did he do when Thomas Jefferson and Aaron Burr were tied? He campaigned for Jefferson because he thought he was the lesser of 2 evils. What did Alexander Hamilton do against Aaron Burr when he was running for governor? Campaigned against him. What did Henry Clay do in this particular election? Is he campaigned for John Quincy Adams, and he ends up winning the election 13 votes to 7 to 4. And as a result of this vote in the House of Representatives, John Quincy Adams becomes the nation's 6th President of the United States. Now the man that will be his vice president will be another of the famous 3, John C. Calhoun. So John Quincy Adams becomes the 6th President of the United States. John C. Calhoun will serve as his vice president. Now, Andy, who's upset about this? Oh, to say the least. He is furious. He thinks, hey, I won the largest amount of popular votes. I won the largest amount of electoral votes, and I'm not president of the United States. And he gets really mad when what happens? Just guess. What does John Quincy Adams do to repay Henry Clay for his efforts? What's he do? Very good, Carter. He makes him Secretary of State. And that really gives Jackson the red rear, if you know what I mean. Because what have all the Secretary of States done after they served as Secretary of State? Became the president. And Jackson is furious. He thinks a deal was made. That John Quincy Adams, and it probably was, that John Quincy Adams said to Henry Clay, hey, support me in the House, because you got a lot of pull, and I'll make you Secretary of State, and chances are then you could be the next President of the United States. Jackson hated that deal so bad, he referred to it as a corrupt bargain. Corrupt bargain. So Jackson was outraged, and he claimed the appointment of Henry Clay as Secretary of State a corrupt bargain between Henry Clay and John Quincy Adams. He even went as far as to refer to Henry Clay as the Judas of the West. Anybody know who Judas was? What did Judas do? Who did he defy? Jesus. Yes. So that's calling him something kind of bad. He was referred to him as the Judas of the West. Yeah.
Referred to Adams or?
Andrew Jackson referred to Henry Clay as the Judas of the West, the man that went behind everybody's back to get personal gain for himself. Their relationship obviously will be strained forever. Now, what do you think Jackson does after this bitter defeat in 1824? What's he do between 1825 and 1828?
Goes back to the plantation.
No? That's what he normally does. That's a good guess. What does he do because he's mad?
Finds a way to get back.
And how's he going to do that? He's going to spend the next 3 years preparing for the campaign of 1828. He is going to get after it. He's going to do everything he can to drum up as much support he can, because he's coming back in 1828 and winning the presidency. He's going to put an all-out effort to win the presidency, and that starts in 1825. He was so mad, kiddos, because we don't know Jackson as a Republican president. Well, he's not a Republican. What is he? What's Jackson? Jacksonian democracy. We still use it today. What? Democrat. This is where it comes from, Mackenzie. He was so mad, he wouldn't even call himself a Republican. He said, I'm a Democratic Republican. President Adams is a national Republican. He even split the name, which eventually became what? Democrats that we know today. This is where the Democratic Party in America starts, is when Andrew Jackson from 1825 to 1828 would refer to himself as a Democratic Republican. And those other guys are national Republicans. So when we get into this election, basically you're going to have the Republicans versus the Democrats. Okay? Because Jackson's known as a Democratic president. He's a Democrat, not a Republican. Okay? And Jacksonian democracy is a democratic concept. It's even used today. So let's get to it. Who do the Republican Party nominate for president in 1828? Come on. No, who's the president? John Quincy Adams. He wants to run for re-election. The Republican Party nominate John Quincy Adams for re-election. And the Democrats, or Democratic Republicans, nominate Andrew Jackson. Now I'm just going to tell you how it is. It's not pretty. Not pretty at all. The Republican Party ran a dirty campaign against Jackson. They were ruthless. Most of it personal attacks. The Republican Party was ruthless. Horrible, dirty politics. And a dirty campaign, mostly personal. Who did they attack? His wife. What did they call her? An adulteress, excuse my French, and a whore. Publicly called her an adulteress and a whore. I told you it would come back to haunt her later, didn't I? An adulteress and a whore. Who else did they attack, personally? No? Think back about, I said this will come back later in our lecture too. Who else did they attack? Call them bad names. Come on. No? Who in his family could have had a reason to maybe...
Oh,
Mother. Remember what his mother supposedly did by rumor to get the boys out of prison camp? They referred to Jackson's mother as a prostitute. Horrible, horrible, horrible campaign. Again, referring to his wife as an adulteress and a whore, referring to his mother as a prostitute. Now, you heard George W. Bush in his interview on 60 Minutes say how hard it was for him as the son of a president to hear your father be criticized. How would you like to hear throughout a campaign that your mother is an adulteress and a whore, and your wife's an adulteress and a whore, and your mother's a prostitute? How'd you like to hear that throughout a campaign? Would that kind of get to you? It did. It caused tremendous stress, not only on Andrew Jackson, but on stress on who? Rachel. Mom's dead, so she doesn't hear it. But a tremendous pressure and stress on both Andrew Jackson and his wife. It was a terrible, terrible tactic. Terrible tactic. Well, Jackson gets a break because by the election of 1828, all white males are eligible to vote. What type of people are most people in the country at this time? Elite or common? They're common, about 90%. Okay, so that's a huge advantage for Jackson because who are the common people going to support? The elitists or Andrew Jackson? Absolutely Andrew Jackson. And these common people are making up a majority of the nation's population, and they're going to vote for Jackson in the election. And because of that, he wins a big-time victory over Adams. He has 178 electoral votes to just 83 for the incumbent president. So Jackson, because of the vote of the common man, defeats John Quincy Adams, 178 electoral votes to 83, and becomes the nation's 7th president. Now, ironically, John C. Calhoun will continue to serve as vice president under Jackson as well. Why would he do that? Because do we really have a Democratic Party? Or not yet. He ran and said he was a Democratic Republican. So John C. Calhoun's a Republican, and he just assumes the vice presidency. It's weird because you don't have another party competing in a way. It's actually the Republican Party. The Democratic Party now will really be established by the next election. Okay? Now, everything's great, right? We just wait till March. Jackson's inaugurated, hunky-dory. Well, something happens, very unfortunate, on December 22nd of 1828, before Jackson's inaugurated, because he doesn't go in until March of 1829. Anybody want to guess what happened to him? It wasn't so much him, but it affected him tremendously. His wife dies of a heart attack. Sadly, on December 22nd of 1828, prior to his inauguration, Jackson's wife dies of a heart attack. How'd that go? Horribly grief-stricken, horribly bitter and mad. Who's he mad at? He's mad at the Republicans because he basically blames them for her death because of the stress. He basically states, the Republicans murdered my wife. That was his feeling. He was incredibly upset. He loved his wife very much. And he was convinced that his political opponents killed his wife with their relentless assaults on her character, stressed her out to her death. And he basically accused the Republicans of murdering her. Now I'll tell you what, this guy loved his wife, holy smokes. He was in so much grief that he seriously considered not going to Washington, D.C. and be inaugurated as the 7th president. He seriously considered it. Almost didn't go and become inaugurated as the 7th president. He almost didn't go, he was so grief-stricken. What would change his mind, Kate? Why would he decide to go, even though he's so grief-stricken? like, in his mind he had to, so I'm trying to make I'll tell you what, I'll tell you a story, kind of. So, my dad passes away. I have two boys playing basketball, one's a sophomore, one's a senior. My dad passes away a week before their regional tournament, okay? And so, we talk about when we're gonna have the funeral arrangements, and we probably should have had them the weekend of the tournament. So what are my kids thinking? What are my two boys thinking? Should we what? Should we go play in the tournament or not? What changed their mind to go play? Probably, although if they don't go, because they're pretty good players, what does that do to the team? It hurts the team's chances to get to the state tournament. Jackson thought the same thing. I can't let these common people down. They put their trust in me and they voted for me and they want me to serve them and represent them and give them a voice in government. And so I am, despite my grief and my anger over politics in general right now, I am going to go and be inaugurated in and serve the presidency for those people that were loyal enough to me to vote for. Okay, that'll take us to our last subtopic of the day. It's kind of an interesting one, and that is the inauguration of Andrew Jackson. It's kind of an interesting inauguration in comparison to today's ceremonies. Okay, the inauguration of Andrew Jackson. And that occurred on March 4th, 1829. March 4th, 1829 is when Andrew Jackson was inaugurated in as the nation's 7th president. Now, this is kind of interesting because all these common people that voted for him decided to come watch the inauguration, okay? And so they estimated that about 10,000 people came into Washington, D.C. to see this. And you're thinking, well, 10,000 people isn't very many, and it is.